Here at Michigan Family Wellness, we believe chiropractic care and nutritional-based therapies are a foundational part of a healthy family lifestyle. No matter where you're at in the mitten, having a family is such an exciting time of life. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by stress, fatigue, and responsibilities with the kids, we invite you to become part of this empowering community to create happy, healthy families. By providing engaging interviews and practical applications, Dr. Wallner cultivates family health by equipping our listeners with the tools they need to elevate wellness in their own family. Dr. Wallner passionately serves the Michigan community at his chiropractic and nutrition-based practice, where he specializes in pregnancy, pediatrics, and family wellness care. And now, here's your host, Dr. Kyle Wallner.
Good day, families, and welcome home. That's right, my name is Dr. Kyle, and this is the Empowering MFW family, and we're so glad to be with you today. If you're joining us for the first time, I want to thank you for tuning in. And let me just back off the music here, and perfect. You know, one of the things we say here all the time is the health of you and your family is your number one priority. It is your greatest asset. The best way to have a healthy family is by living a family wellness lifestyle. So if you're looking for efficient, effective, and sustainable ways to elevate your health and the health of your family, then I strongly recommend you make yourself comfortable, because we have an amazing show for you today. And before we get to today's episode, let me say a few words, as I do each and every week, about Power Performance Gym. Power Performance Gym is dedicated to helping you achieve your best definition of healthy and strong. Power Performance specializes in strength and conditioning for individuals, small groups, and athletic teams, weight and pain management, as well as recovery and nutrition. Everyone at Power experiences a full movement and health analysis to build your blueprint for success, targeting your goals. Mention the Michigan Family Wellness Podcast to receive your movement and health analysis as a complimentary gift. Learn more about how Power Performance can help you move, look, and feel better by visiting powergym.com. That's POWRGYM.com. Dr. John is a passionate creative doctor and podcaster who just wants to deliver a shot of inspiration out into this noisy world. Dr. John graduated from Cleveland Chiropractic College and has a thriving practice in Las Vegas. He is completing the Wellness Practitioner Program with Dr. James Chestnut through the International Chiropractic Association in order to expand the knowledge of the health and wellness lifestyle and give back to his community. Dr. John is also involved in an international health scene where he helps bring chiropractic care to the underserved areas of Honduras. He has a podcast called The Wellness Cafe, where Dr. John interviews experts from around the world on different wellness matters ranging from gluten intolerance to loving kindness meditation. All right, families, let's jump into today's interview. Welcome, families, to the interview portion of today's podcast. I'm honored to be joined on the show today by Dr. John. Welcome to the podcast, Doc. It's so great to have you.
It's great to be here, Dr. Kyle. Appreciate your invitation.
Awesome, man. Hey, everyone. I love Dr. John's podcast. I absolutely love it. We'll plug it several times here, but families listening, you need to check out the Good Doctors podcast, The Wellness Cafe. And Dr. John, it's been a pleasure getting acquainted with you over the past few weeks. I know we have a mutual friend, Dr. Ed. So, Doc, if you're listening as well, honor and appreciation to you. He's helped us a lot with launching our podcast and creating these empowering communities. But Dr. John, I'm excited to jump into our discussion today on how you help women, mothers, and families elevate their health and wellness, especially as it relates to mindset. But before we head there are two questions we ask every guest on the podcast. So help our listeners and myself get to know you more by telling us what family looks like for you.
What family means to me is basically a group of people who love, respect, and can rely on each other at the end of the day. So those are who are in your corners and love you unconditionally. Personally, right now, I am here in Vegas with no immediate family members, but I have a group of friends who I really rely on, or I have in my corner to support me and help me guide me through. So I think you don't need to have a big group of people in your corner, but you need to have a solid guys in your corner.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's a major theme here on the podcast. Your family doesn't always have to be those specific blood relations. It's just the people you abide with and that you spend time with and, look out for each other in your respective communities. Dr. John, another thing I love to say on the Michigan Family Wellness Podcast is that we are smitten with the mitten. So let's see if I can do it here on the video, but here we are, smitten with the mitten. We got the Michigan hand sign there. So I know you're out there in Nevada. I know you've lived out in California before and you have some heritage with Thailand and all that. But John, have you ever experienced the Great Lakes or anything that the mitten has to offer?
Unfortunately, no. I've never been up by the Great Lakes. I've been by Chicago, but that's about as close as I came.
That's totally fine.
To the Great Lakes.
If you've been by Chicago, then you can definitely appreciate Lake Michigan because that's right there as well. But all right, Dr. John, let's go ahead and get more in depth because I really want the women, mothers, and families listening to benefit from your experience, your expertise, and your unique perspective. So, Dr. John, oftentimes, I find what makes these conversations so relevant and powerful for people is just briefly getting a better understanding of your story and what led you to become a chiropractor. So please kick off our discussion by sharing your story.
Absolutely, and thank you for asking that. My journey started when I was a child. I grew up in Thailand, and as a kid, I was very sick. I would get sick all the time as a routine. It was an unwritten appointment in my family's calendar that, oh yeah, John has to go to see a doctor. If it goes 3, 4, or 5 weeks and I don't go see a doctor, that's not normal, right? The norm was I would get sinus infection, tonsil infection, I would get allergies and ear infections all the time. So my family would take me to the doctors. And every time I go, I would get prescribed antibiotics, right? And I would take that for 14 days, 21 days, depending on what the doctors prescribed me. And that just went on and on and on as a cycle until I was about 10 or 11. And then it stopped. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. But looking back, what had changed at that time was my mother started to supplement me with royal jelly, which is great for immunization, and also bee pollen. And as a kid, I started to experiment more with different foods, right? And growing up, I was a picky eater. I would eat chicken nuggets, KFC, candies, Frito-Lays, chips, and those are about it. Some Coca-Cola here and there, and some milk.
All that good food, right? Yeah.
Yes, that was my diet growing up as a kid, and no wonder why I was sick. And also, I wasn't very active as a child. I was the gamer.
Right.
I was the nerd that get together in front of a Famicom for like 6 hours at a time, and I wouldn't go outside at all. And then 5th grade, I started to play more soccer. I played basketball. I was having fun. I was making friends. I was having my own little community. And all that happened when I was about 10, 11. And then my illnesses cycle stopped. Now, that was my first experience with natural healing. And looking back, always remind me, or at least, what's the word? I guess it was a personal experience with how the body is able to heal itself.
Absolutely. And so those kind of experiences led you to kind of look at the profession of chiropractic. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah, and I came to America when I was 14, and one of the things that I noticed right away that was strange and different about this great place of the United States was that pharmaceutical drugs advertising would be on basically every third commercials here, and that wasn't the case in Thailand. And I found out later that's not the case in anywhere else in the world but New Zealand and America. I knew that I wanted to help people, but I wasn't sure which field. And I ended up volunteering as a farm tech or helping a farm tech department in the hospital. And I hated it because I was basically putting stuff, different medications, syringes, cottons, alcohol in a bag for patients to be delivered to the room. And I didn't like that at all. And that just felt sickening to me that people have to go through that cycle.
Right.
Now, I was inspired by my uncle, who is a chiropractor practicing in Thailand right now, to go check out chiropractic. And that's kind of the start of me getting into the natural healthcare system. I was like, oh, cool. I can be a doctor that helps people with natural methods. So I went and signed up, got enrolled in to chiropractic school. But at that time, I didn't have a full understanding of what wellness means, what chiropractic lifestyle means. I thought I was providing a modality called the chiropractic adjustment. And I would help people who has headache. I would help people who comes to me with neck pain or back pain. If you don't have those things, don't come to me. That was my thinking first year at chiropractic school. And then I was exposed to the work of Dr. James Chestnut, Dr. Dan Murphy, and I was blown away by the information that they give you and the empowerment that and the understanding of what is the root cause of chronic diseases. And that's when I enrolled in the Dr. James Chestnut program, the wellness practitioner through the International Chiropractic Association, and really understand the role of chiropractic care and how it supports the wellness lifestyle and the importance of eating well, moving well, and thinking well, and how that's a foundation of health, and really how those chronic diseases, which are costing us trillions of dollars, 90 or more % of all expenditures are from chronic diseases. And those are lifestyle diseases, which is preventable. It's the way we live that's going to dictate how our health is in the future. So, and that's really the catalyst to my podcast. And that's why I started the Wellness Cafe. So.
Fantastic, Doc. Well, again, listeners can go check out the Wellness Cafe. But, Doc, let's go there real quick, because that relates to exactly what we're talking about and what I want to get into with today's discussion. Listeners of the MFW program are used to hearing me talk about the benefits and value of the family wellness lifestyle and how the chiropractic adjustment specifically plays into that. But Dr. John, there may be someone new listening today, someone who may be crazy stressed and who doesn't want to rely on, some of the things you were mentioning, the over-the-counter meds for the rest of their life, and wants to be able to spend more quality time with their family. So really, I have 2 quick questions here for you. What are the benefits of the chiropractic adjustment in terms of its therapeutic effects, and how does that relate to a wellness lifestyle, or in the context of this podcast, the family wellness lifestyle?
So that's a great question, Dr. Kyle. That's an awesome question. But first, I'm going to have to explain a few things to our listeners here. I'm going to start by explaining the role of the autonomic nervous system, which is one of the branch of the nervous system. That part of the nervous system controls things like breathing, heart rates, digestions, your thyroid glands, your reflexes. Those are things that are automatic that happens in your body, right? You don't have to think about raising your heart rate. You don't have to know how to produce the thyroid hormones. Your body just does. Now, this amazing nervous system of ours operate in 2 states. One is the sympathetic nervous system, or the stress response system. The second one is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the state of rest and repair. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for resting, learning, repairing our organs, repairing our DNAs, immune activation, digestions, and overall total relaxation of the whole system. Now, the other one is the sympathetic nervous system that puts your body into the fight or flight response. So an example would be you go out for a jog and then a tiger comes out in front of you. I know that's an extreme example, but just to make a point.
Sure.
your heart rate would goes up, your blood pressure would goes up, you start breathing harder, you're getting ready to run away, flight, or kill the tiger, fight. You have your body detects threats and it needs to remove itself from that environment. Your cortisol goes up, your stress hormone goes up, and that's the state of stress. Is that bad for the body? No, it's appropriate for that moment in time because you're dealing with that stress. But chronic stress, putting your body in that constant overactivated sympathetic nervous system is going to wreak havoc in your body. Now, to come back to your question, what is the power of chiropractic adjustments? When you have subluxation or when your spinal joints don't move the way it's supposed to, you have poor posture, that is a stress, a physical stress on your nervous system. And the chiropractic adjustment remove that interference, take that stressor off of your nervous system. So what does a chiropractic adjustment do? It will help with your immune system. It will help lower your blood pressure. It will help decrease the stress hormones. And then arrays of things that comes afterward, which is decreased pain, headache gets better, and on and on and on.
Absolutely, John. We could be here all day, honestly, talking about the plethora of different benefits and value that the single treatment of a chiropractic adjustment provides. And what I hear you saying really is that this all kind of relates to resiliency, because honestly, Dr. John, at least with the patients that I talk to, it's not like the stress in their life is necessarily going away. I mean, yes, there are things that we can do to help lower our stress, but there's always going to be stress in our life. And I think to your point, when that cumulative stress is constant and chronic, that's when we start to develop these insidious, these slow onset states of disease. And I think you said it there perfectly. The chiropractic adjustment is a great, natural, safe, I like to use the terms, efficient, effective, and sustainable way to help lower that sympathetic response and balance that parasympathetic nervous system to just help elevate their wellness and increase their resiliency. So, Dr. John, let me set up another framework here for you. You talked about, Dr. James Chestnut and the Eat Well, Think Well, Move Well. So let's go there for a second. There's so much content, at least in my opinion, out there on ways to eat better. There's diets, there's nutritional protocols, and, I would absolutely advocate, and I'm sure you would agree as well, that food can be some of the most powerful medicine in the world. Likewise, I think there's an abundance of content out there in the health and wellness space about moving well. These days you can do a high intensity interval workout or a yoga stretching program from the comfort of your living room. It's so easy. But Dr. John, I think there's a gap here because I know you talk about eating well and moving well, but I think you're really an expert at articulating the mindset and the thoughts. How do we think well? So explain to our listeners how their thoughts and their mindset impact their health.
That's a fantastic question, Dr. Kyle, because that is not taught in school, right? That's the ability for a human being to deal with stress isn't really taught in the educational system. And thoughts can become toxic, right? Thinking is just a tool, but when you have overthinking, when you're stressed, it wreaks havoc on your body. Now, I'll just have to go back to the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system really fast, because the body cannot differentiate between a real tiger or a mental tiger. It can't differentiate between somebody's trying to rob you or a pile of paperwork waiting for you at work. So when you're stressed about certain things, when you're thinking about the jobs, when you're thinking about the stress in your relationship, when you're overthinking, when you sink into depression, the body reacts the same way. Your stress hormones goes up, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, and on and on and on.
I think you said it perfectly there, Dr. John. It really illustrates the point. One of the number one causes of low back pain is job dissatisfaction. So when you're not happy at your work or your career, it's statistically likely that your low back is going to hurt. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think there's a stats that was, I read somewhere that says 66% of lawyers don't recommend their professions, and like 52% of doctors don't recommend their professions.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's such a great point there, Doc, and I really appreciate you, really dropping that value on our listeners here. So, Dr. John, in terms of practical applications, how can people learn or how can people practice a healthy mindset, or how can people, catch themselves when their thoughts are going in the wrong direction? Because it's really different than the other two components of the wellness lifestyle, if you will. For example, it's one thing to say, okay, well, eat better, because you can physically pick up the bag of Doritos and start eating the bad food, or you can reach for something different, something healthy. Now, that may not be as tangible, that may not be as easy, I guess, when it comes to your thoughts, because it's all up there in your head. So do you have any tips or tricks or, experiences that you can help our listeners with in terms of cultivating and nurturing that mental positive thought mindset?
Absolutely. And there's a few things that your listeners can do right now, right? But I'll start by encouraging or inviting your listeners to be more aware of your thoughts, right? When you start to have a negative thoughts, and those usually start by an event that happened, or an anticipation of a bad event, something that you don't want to happen, or something bad that happened that you wish didn't happen. And then it cycles into, okay, well, I don't like that. It's a what we call an expectation hangover, where you expect something, but the event or the reality is actually different. Mm-hmm. So be mindful of that thoughts. Oh, I am depressed. Or, oh, I am mad. I am angry. Usually because something happened, it triggers an emotion. An event has to happen before it triggers the emotion in your head. So if you're aware that you are not that emotion, thoughts are just something that occurs, and step back and realize that, oh, yes, it's just a pattern. It's like a cloud that comes and goes, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the best thing for your listeners to practice is gratitude, because that's training your mind to start seeing the positives, because we have the negative bias, meaning we always gravitate toward negative thinking.
Right.
And to have a gratitude practice on a daily basis, to be grateful for people in your corner, your family, your kids, your spouse, or the ability to have a job, or be able to provide services that you get paid or rewarded for, mm-hmm. or the ability to be able to drive a car to go in certain places and not be in war zone right now, like certain places in the world. Right. I think that's a key, is to just practice gratitude and be grateful for this current moment in time.
Gratitude, thankfulness, appreciation, love. I think those are all great things, Dr. John. And just to even further tie this all back into chiropractic, Dr. John, from personal experience, when I've been stressed out, when I've been anxious or worrisome, and I go get a chiropractic adjustment from my own chiropractor, especially in my neck, especially the cervical spine, I don't know about you, Dr. John, but I mellow out. I completely release and I completely relax. And I don't know if you've experienced that, but I do want to just outline that mechanism for our listeners. And I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but those who are listening who might be new and might be just joining us, but the neurotransmitter GABA is actually one of the central mechanisms when scientists try to describe and what researchers can measure in terms of the effectiveness and the benefits of the chiropractic adjustment. So here's the thing. You have this part of your spinal cord called the dorsal root ganglion, and that's actually where GABA is released from that part of the spinal cord when you have that therapeutic chiropractic adjustment. All right, so that's great. What does that mean? Like, what does that actually do for you? Well, it turns out, Dr. John, that GABA, similar to endorphins, is an incredibly inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it really calms down all of the inflammatory and cellular metabolic processes in that area, and then also to those nerves that go to those target tissues, okay? It's the best drug-free treatment out there, and that's one of the purposes of this podcast, is to communicate, the benefits and value of chiropractic, because here's the thing, now that GABA has been released and your nervous system has been balanced, you will be less irritable, you'll sleep better, you'll get relief from pain, you'll recover faster from exercise. You talked about the immune system earlier, you'll have better concentration, and just to circle back to our discussion for today, you'll be less anxious and you won't worry as much. So I think it's a great natural treatment. Have you experienced any of that with your own patients or yourself personally?
Absolutely, Dr. Kyle. Ever since I've joined chiropractic school, I've been getting adjusted on a regular basis ever since. So there's no doubt about the fact that it helped releases the tension, especially in the upper cervical. And here's the driving force that your listeners need to understand is the intimate relationship between the spine and the brain. Because the spine is really a neural organ. It constantly talks to the brain, and the brain talks to the spine. So the brain can know what's going on in relative to space and gravity. And loss of normal movement in the spine is heavily affecting the brain. So that's one of the reasons why elderly people who breaks their hip has really high mortality rate, is because when they lose their spinal movement, they become sedentary, the immune system just goes to the immune system is just weakened. And I can say that firsthand because I just lost my grandfather a few months ago because he broke his hip and then his health just went on a downward spiral. So for listeners out there, it's so important to get checked by your chiropractors, to have a good, solid chiropractor in your corner so that you can rely on, you go to for, and your family can go to get checked for subluxation and get spinal adjustments.
Outstanding, Dr. John. Absolutely fantastic. I just can't thank you enough for bringing the value and the awesome benefits to the podcast today. Now, Dr. John, do you have any resources to equip the families listening today in terms of improving their mindset, improving their thoughts, or elevating those psychosomatic reflexes for us?
Absolutely. Listeners, you can go to www.drjohnr.com/gift. I have a gift for you guys. Basically, it's a PDF outlining a 7-day mind-body detox. So what I'm going to talk about in the PDF is really practical techniques to help decrease stress. And you will notice the difference over the 7 days. You're going to notice the change in your thought patterns. You're going to notice the change in your anxiety or depression level. And you're going to notice how your life might be a little better off if you continue on this practice for the rest of your life. Now, it does not have to be something that you practice on a regimen, like, you don't have to go like, okay, I'm going to train for a marathon. Right. It's something to be aware of and just to take in consideration how your mind works and how to be aware of your own thoughts, which is crucial.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. Those simple changes, those little things that you do over long periods of time are what really get you that lasting change. Now, Dr. John, where can people find more about you? I know you just mentioned the website there and you have the Wellness Cafe podcast, but go ahead and tell us where we can find out more about Dr. John.
You guys can go to www.drjohnr.com to learn more about me, and that's where the podcast is. You can go to also www.thewellness.cafe for the podcast. And you can find those podcasts on iTunes, Stitchers, and many other podcast apps.
Fantastic, Dr. John. It's been an honor talking with you today. You have brought the value. Thank you so much for giving back and becoming part of the MFW family.
Absolutely, Dr. Kyle. And you are doing an amazing job empowering your community with the type of message of wellness and health And I thank you for doing that.
So, what'd you think? We'd love to get your feedback. If you would like to email me about anything you've heard on this or any previous edition of the Michigan Family Wellness Podcast, my email is drkyle@michiganfamilywellness.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Michigan Family Wellness, Instagram @Michigan Family Wellness, and my Twitter handle is @Dr. Kyle Wallner. And take full advantage of the Family Wellness Lifestyle audio library at michiganfamilywellness.com. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, families. Have an awesome week, and remember, we can do far more together than we could ever do apart.
Now that you've been equipped with the latest in family wellness solutions, we want to encourage you to apply these strategies right away. But the thing is, there's still so much to learn. Connect with Dr. Wallner's Chiropractic and Nutrition Office by going to michiganfamilywellness.com and click the newsletter sign-up button to join the informative and supportive community of chiropractic wellness. You will also receive as a gift from Dr. Wallner a copy of Michigan Family Wellness Solutions, an invaluable resource containing dynamic tools to elevate family health and vitality. Michigan Family Wellness wants to thank you for being part of today's podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and review.